Hi everybody, welcome to the Generative AI Nerd channel. And in this video, I want to demonstrate to you an application that allows to simulate a full qualitative research project with AI agents. In particular, I've built a team of 10 different agents that can jointly create synthetic interviewees, then interview these interviewees, and finally analyze the interviews that have been executed. And as output, this application provides a summary of the core findings of the interviews, as well as a Gioia-like data structure with first order and second order concepts. Now, in this video, I will show you step by step how you can use this open source application. So let's get started. Yes, and so here you can actually see an overview of the framework that I have built to create this synthetic interview application. And it consists of 4 different phases. So the first phase is the phase where the user needs to provide input. Then there is a second phase where the first set of agents will create synthetic persona that can be interviewed. Then in the third phase, the actually interviews will be conducted and analyzed. And then in the fourth phase, the final results will be reported. And what I will do in this video is to show you step by step in the application every phase so that you can get a good understanding of how this application exactly works. So let's move to the first phase. Yes, so here we are in the application that I've built. And so this is a Streamlit application that you can access via the link that will be in the descriptions. And the only thing that you have to provide is an API key to talk with the large language models. Now, there are 2 options. One option is to use the Groq platform. And this is a platform where you can actually for free use some open source models. So for instance, here you can see that you can select different models. And actually, I would encourage you to use the Meta Llama because here you will not face a lot of rate limits. If you want to do a first experiment, this is actually a good option. And then you can also use an OpenAI key. And then you can use 2 models. I always use here the GPT-4o Mini because then you don't kind of consume a lot of tokens, and in that way you keep down the cost. So these are the 2 options that you have, and I always recommend to start with Groq, and then if you really want to do more extensive interviews, you can go to OpenAI, but then you have to take into account that you're paying for tokens. Yes, so the first thing we need to do now in this application is to express an interview goal. And now I've prepared a specific goal. So let me show you what I have prepared for you. So what I want to do here is I want to conduct an explorative study on why innovation theater happens in companies and what are the implications of innovation theater. And I also kind of highlight, I want to identify core drivers and outcomes of innovation theater. So this is a typical explorative academic project that I want to do here. And so this is what I need to describe in this first box. Here I need to describe how many people I want to interview, and let's not go too crazy, and let's restrict it to 10 people. Yeah? And then I can even give some additional context for the research. And in this case, I want to give the LLMs a bit more information about what I actually mean with innovation theater. So let me show you what I prepared here. Yes, so here I then simply copy paste a bit what is actually the definition of innovation theater. So this is the typical Steve Blank definition of innovation theater. So that's what I provide here. Here we have to give the age range. So I want to mainly interview kind of corporate venturing managers. So let's say that they are typically between 30 and 55 years old. And I can choose the geographical focus. So let's now make it maybe Europe. That seems to be quite okay. And then actually what you will need to do is to upload some PDFs of LinkedIn profiles of people that are representative for the sample. And let me briefly show you how you can do that. Yes, so if you go to your LinkedIn account, you can search for people. And I here search on the topic of corporate venturing. And then I looked for first order connections. And then, of course, I get a list of people. And now I can click of one of these persons. And actually, when we go to the LinkedIn profile of this person, you can click here on more. And then you can do save to PDF. And then you can actually download a PDF file of the kind of CV of this person. And so then we can use these PDFs for kind of giving inspiration to our agents to create synthetic interviewees. So that's what I will need to do now here. So I can here now click on Browse Files to upload PDF profiles. And I have prepared here a number of profiles. So I will now upload them into my system. Here I can also kind of define the gender of my interviewees. So now I've provided all the information that is necessary. I could even stipulate here additional criteria if I want to kind of further sample on specific criteria. And now the only thing I still need to do is to provide my API key. And so I will now use already the OpenAI model. So I paste now my OpenAI key, OpenAI API key. I use the GPT-4o mini model, and now I can press enter. And now I have given all the necessary information. So now we have executed actually phase 1 of my application. I have given all the input. So now we are ready to start kind of create the synthetic persona that can be interviewed. So let me show you how that works in the application. Yeah, so now I simply have to press here, analyze profiles. And now an agent will kind of analyze the profiles and create a kind of executive summary for each profile so that we then can use them in the next step. Yes, and now the profiles have been summarized. So these are real people with a summary of their LinkedIn profile. And now we can click here on the next step to now start creating a sample based on the kind of categorizations that I provided. So I can click now, and now we can see here the synthetic sample that has been created. And so these are people that do not really exist. These are people that are made up by a first agent. So, and it made sure that we have males and females, that we have variation in age, variation in location, and so on and so on. Yeah? So now I can press enter, and now it will use this basic information and the LinkedIn profiles to really start creating persona that can be interviewed. So let me show you what the next step is in terms of output. Yes, and so now the personas have been generated. So let me briefly show you. So first persona it created was Nadine Schmidt, 37 years old, female. And then you can click on that. And then you can see you get a full kind of background information for this synthetic person. Yeah, so this person no longer exists. It has been inspired by LinkedIn profiles, but it doesn't exist. But you get a background, personality description, and also a full description of this person. Yeah? So you see it now provides quite an extensive persona description for 10 interviewees. So now we are ready with kind of the next step in our flow. Yeah, so phase 2 has now been finished. So now we can jump to phase 3. And this is the most important phase where actually all these personas will be interviewed. And as a first step, questions will be generated that can be used in the interview. Then the interview will be executed. Then an agent will analyze the interview. Another agent will do a first order coding of the interview. And then it will also kind of learn from the interviews, then fine-tune also the questions, and then it goes to the next interview. So here we do a loop where different agents every time kind of prepare, execute, and analyze the interview. So let me show you how that works in the application. So now here, after creating our personas, I can click on next step. So now we go to the create question step. So now it will kind of create the questions for the first interview. Yes, and so now we get a list of the questions that have been prepared for the first interview. So here it asks as a first step, tell something about your role. How would you define innovation? And indeed some kind of opening questions. Can you describe recent innovation initiative? What are the common challenges of organizations when trying to implement innovation practices? Yeah, so you see that it kind of prepares a question that allows to kind of identify drivers and outcomes of innovation theater. Now, if you want, you can kind of delete questions. You can also add questions if you think that's relevant. So here you can fine-tune if you want. Now, let's now not do this. So now I'll just agree, and now I can press enter. And this is now the stage where it start executing the interviews and analyzing. Yeah, so now here you see that the agents will start interviewing the first persona, Nadine Schmidt. And this will take quite some time because here a lot of agents need to do work. So this will take definitely like 10, 15 minutes or even a bit longer. But then we can wait for the final results. You can follow up. Yeah? So now we see that, that there is no interview finished. But then after a while, all the interviews will be finished. So now we simply have to wait until the interviews are finished. Yes, and so now the 10 interviews have been executed, and this has taken quite some time. So in this case, it took like 35 minutes. So take that into account. Doing these interviews is quite time consuming, but now we are ready to take a look at the final results. So now we can move to the final phase where also a final agent has done a second order analysis on the first order concepts. And now we can see what the application has produced in terms of outputs. So now I can click here on the next step, and here we actually get an overview of the completed interview data. We can look at final reflections, the final questions. So these are the questions that were asked in the final interview. Here we can get all the transcripts, and here we can get the Gioia analysis. So let me briefly show you step by step what has been produced. So let's take a look at the Gioia coding. So this is a typical coding approach for qualitative research. And here I've got kind of a list of all the first order concepts identified, and I can click on them, and then I would also get representative quotes from the interviews. So that's what I get here. So you see quite some first order concepts has been identified, and here we get then the second order concepts. And so for instance, here I have a second order concept, barriers to genuine innovation. And then I can click on that, and then I can see the first order concepts that belong to this second order team. So in this case, resistance to change, lack of alignment, scarcity of resources, fear of failure, which actually makes a lot of sense. And again, I get some representative quotes. So in that way, I can now kind of explore the first order and second order concepts that have emerged out of these 10 interviews being executed. So I hope that this makes clear how this application can help you to explore a bit the possibilities of synthetic interviews for kind of simulating qualitative research. Now, let me also end by highlighting some of the limitations of this approach. So what are some core limitations? First of all, of course, we need to realize we are having here simulated interviews. So this has nothing to do with interviewing real people. Here we have LLMs that are used by agents to simulate interviews and to create synthetic persona. So that's always something we have to take into account. In the end, these are agents predicting the next word in a sentence to generate text. So that definitely still has a lot of limitations. You have to take into account that we start here from some real LinkedIn profiles, but we don't use these profiles. We're actually then kind of using them as inspiration for the personas. Another limitation that you need to realize is that this is triggering costs. So especially if you use the OpenAI API, you will have token cost. Now, in my experience, like running these 10 interviews will have a cost of less than €1, so it's not excessive, but still there are costs involved. Again, you can try it out with the free Groq API key, but then you will have limits in terms of the number of interviews you can do, because you will hit some rate limits if you would do more. And of course, I don't see this as a substitute for real qualitative research. For me, this is more like a training tool to help people to get a first feeling for, if I would now do an explorative kind of qualitative research person on a certain topic, what kind of first order teams can I expect? What kind of questions could I ask? So in that way, I think it can be really valuable to do this, to prepare yourself to do real research, but it's definitely not replacing existing research. So I'm quite sure that at the moment, with this kind of Gioia coding, you will not be able to make a top publication, because it will mainly identify the usual suspects, but actually it often is interesting to already know the usual suspects so that you can really focus on identifying the more counterintuitive observations that you can do from your real research. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you in this video. I hope it's helpful. Please don't forget to subscribe. That's really helpful for the channel, and it also motivates me to make more videos. Thanks for your attention. Bye.